And welcome back to another episode of Debt Nation, where we are busy putting death out of business. And I've got a really exciting episode here all about Mormon transhumanism and other related matters. But before we do that, we cross over to Blair in France, which is going to be kind of cool. We'll just first thank our sponsors, and that's Lincoln Cannon, who is making a wade into this conversation. Actually, thanks over there at Thrivous, free nootropics and geoprotectors that goes from $5 all the way up to $160 worth of free Thrivous. You know the rules. The rules are in the description. Share it around and get your hands on some of that. And also, I want to thank David Kelly, I Am Transhuman campaign, for a fantastic campaign there. Check out that page. Ben Blair, it's really good to have you on the show. Really excited to talk to you about Mormon transhumanism. But you're in France. Tell us, how is France?
Well, like most of the world today, it's in lockdown, and it's a shame because it's beautiful weather today, and I live in Normandy, and it's kind of a countryside landscape that feeds my soul, and it's a shame that we're mostly cooped up in our home. But there are more important things than enjoying beautiful weather and beautiful countryside.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we wish you all the best, in this hard time. Everybody's dealing with the same thing all over the world, it seems like. There's nowhere to run. It is a kind of a prison planet in a way, which is why we advocate a lot of space technologies getting off the planet, making it multiplanetary. Because if we could, just go to Mars and enjoy the French version of Mars, it might be all right. It's fun. But to think about. But yes, at the moment, yes, we're all under this regime, and we'll all deal with it the best we can. And we wish you and your loved ones all the best in this time. It's all we can really do at this sort of time. Everything's frozen. It's kind of very interesting period of time on planet Earth. I'm very very excited. So, so let's talk about Mormonism and transhumanism. Let's we've talked about Mormon transhumanism a lot on this show. Micah Redding and Lincoln Cannon come on here quite regularly talking about it, and we really thank Lincoln Cannon for his Thrivous contribution. Great supplements, fantastic. And Micah, very, very interesting person. But, let's just, for the new listeners, because we're getting a lot of new listeners nowadays, what is Mormonism? Let's just start at the very basics. What is Mormonism? What's Mormonism, and how is it related to Christianity? And we'll build from that base.
Okay. Well, first I should say I'm totally intimidated and unfit to follow Lincoln and Micah. They're two of my heroes in terms of religious transhumanism, and they're much more articulate than I am. So I would say whatever I say, you can disregard it and just go listen to their episodes, and you'll get a more accurate perspective. But I would say the way to kind of get Mormonism and transhumanism together. I'm happy to give a brief history of Mormonism, but I feel like the kind of crucial doctrine of Mormonism is this idea of theosis. So let me step back a bit and say Mormonism is kind of a field of religions started by Joseph Smith, and the largest Mormon denomination would be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Joseph Smith was an American born in 1805, and he translated the Book of Mormon, and that's where we get the name. That's where the name Mormon comes from. And his basic, the kind of critical idea that he taught, which he taught for a while, but really crystallized toward the end of his life, is the idea that God wasn't always God, but God became God. And he said in one of his famous discourses called the King Follett Discourse, he said, God was once a man like we are now and became God. And everyone who becomes God must do the same kind of thing. You become God. And that idea of theosis, humans becoming gods, meshes well with the transhumanist idea of that we should pursue post-humanity. And the Mormon Transhumanist Association, Mormon transhumanism, kind of takes those two complementary ideas and say, well, if they're not identical, they're closely related. And they both have a lot of things to say and a lot of common conversations, maybe using different vocabulary, but we think there's a value to kind of approaching them as, again, at least complementary, if not identical tasks.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. This sort of idea of self-directed evolution, in a way, in not in theological terms, but definitely in human terms. This is something that we recognize as closely related to transhumanism. That's very interesting. Yeah, so Mormonism is it's a type of Christianity. It's a Christian religion, and it's a little bit different from mainstream Christianity, based on the fact that Joseph unveiled new information, and that there's a lot more, and going off that, there's this idea that there is space for evolutionary consciousness, in a way, an upgrading of oneself, an upgrading to life, and your status within life, in a way. Because everything in a way is sacred. That's well spelt out in the Book of Mormon, but not equal, but sacred. I think this is yeah. But anyway, that's cool. So let's talk about the history of Mormonism and transhumanism intersecting. It does go back a long time. This is not a new idea. We're in 2020 now. This is not something that has just appeared in 2020. It goes back a long time. You know a lot about this. Where does it sort of go back to, at least in a formal sense?
Well, I would say, from my perspective, I would say formally, it's the formation of the Mormon Transhumanist Association would be kind of the benchmark that we would want to say, okay, here's the formal association between the movement of transhumanism and the movement of Mormonism, how they kind of formally met and articulated some ideas. And of course, there's a lot of teaching and writing and conversations that led up to that. But I would say that would be the formal meeting place of the two schools. And that was in, I think, either 2005 or 2006. I need to check. I know I joined the Mormon Transhumanist Association shortly after it was formed. And I came to it kind of, I had just finished reading The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. And then I was really intrigued by that book, and I felt like, wow, this is more compelling than any sort of science fiction book about the future. And this feels like this isn't science fiction. This feels like real science. This feels like, yeah, this is the trajectory we're on. And then shortly after I finished it, I was a friend referred me to the Mormon Transhumanist Association and said, oh yeah, you should check out. They're kind of talking about some of these ideas that are in The Singularity is Near, and kind of interpreting it through a Mormon lens. So that's when I first heard of Lincoln Cannon, and my good friend from high school, Carl Youngblood, was also one of the original founding members. And I'd been intrigued by the things that he had been writing. so I was excited to join and have kind of been following it since then.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and so this idea that you're still a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the mainstream church. It's not, there are factions within Mormonism. There's a few different factions, but you're still a member of the mainstream Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So is that true with most of the people who associate with Mormonism and transhumanism? Because they are they antithetical to the main church? Do you have a problem being a part of the Transhumanist Association and being a member, or do they get along quite well?
Well, there's no formal association between the two, and the Mormon Transhumanist Association, the criteria for joining the Mormon Transhumanist Association are to support the Transhumanist Declaration and the Mormon Transhumanist Affirmation. So those are the two criteria for the Mormon Transhumanist Association. And of course, one doesn't need to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to support both of those statements. So the members of the Mormon Transhumanist Association, I would say a lot of them learn about it similar to the way I learned about it, like, oh, I'm familiar with these ideas from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I learn about transhumanism, and I kind of put them together, and I'm excited about it. So there are a lot of people who are active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There are plenty of members who are former members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There are many members who have never been members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And kind of the criteria for joining the Mormon Transhumanist Association, or the MTA, maybe I should make sure I get that abbreviation so I don't say Mormon Transhumanist Association over and over. And the LDS Church is also a good abbreviation for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so I don't keep repeating myself on that also. But I would say, yeah, a big market of people that are interested in the MTA are definitely members of the LDS Church, or former members, people who have been associated with the LDS Church, but it's not the only market of people that are interested.
So you mentioned two documents there, or affirmation, or an agreeing with. Did you want to break down? Tell us what those two documents are, and break down a little bit of what you would have to agree with to become an MTA member.
Yeah. Well, I can just read a snippet from both of them.
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
I
appreciate
give you a
that.
sense. Let me see. 1 second. So the two documents are the Transhumanist Declaration, which probably a lot of your listeners are familiar with that. And the other is the Mormon Transhumanist Affirmation. And that's not loading right now. I mean, I can tell you in general terms that the Transhumanist Declaration is it's going to be a more secular document talking about the moral to pursue post-humanity, or to use technology and science in ethical ways to improve the human condition. And the Mormon Transhumanist Affirmation is similar, but is going to use language that resonates more with Christianity and religious teachings, like we want to follow the example of Jesus, for example, and alleviate suffering where we can. I'm sorry, this isn't loading.
No, that's fine, and I really appreciate you taking the time to find that for us. It's fascinating. But yes,
I can share the documents in the. I can share a link with you after, and you can put it in this episode.
All right, yeah, no problem. Yeah, put that in the description. But yes, that's very interesting. It's really interesting because I guess my next question is looking horizontally at different religions around you. Do you see other religions doing the same thing that the Mormon Transhumanist Association is doing? Do you see it anywhere else? And if so, where and to what extent?
Well, I would say the Christian Transhumanist Association that Micah Redding has been running is another great example, and they've been growing. They've had a really good growth rate over the last few years. I'm familiar with, or I wouldn't say I'm familiar with, but I know of other associations. I believe there's a Islamic Transhumanist Association. I don't know if it's called the Islamic Transhumanist Association, but for all intents and purposes, it's that. And I know like Giulio Prusco also has his Turing Church is also kind of religion and transhumanism, and it seems to be I don't know that it's that I would call it a trend right now, but there's kind of a push on religion, on religious practices that have been, on the one hand, there's kind of God is going to take care of everything. All the evils of the world are going to be rescued in a future day because God or Jesus is going to return and set everything straight. And the push towards transhumanism or religious interpretations of transhumanism kind of pushes against that and suggests that, for example, from a Mormon transhumanist lens, that it's not, oh, we wait in patience and anticipate the day when Jesus will return and make everything better. It changes it to, we're going to work very hard to make the world worthy of the return of Jesus or the return of God. And that kind of switch, I think, is something that I really value about the interpretation of religious transhumanism, is that, no, it's on us to take responsibility for evil and death in the world and to do what we can to address those and to alleviate suffering and to solve problems that we can, and kind of trust that we can tackle those big problems. That's kind of been the lessons that we've learned from our religious texts, that we can do more than we have done, and where our responsibility is continually expanding as our technological, physical, and moral horizons continue to expand.
Wow, that's really interesting. And because Mormons definitely have and it's not only Mormons, but I know Mormons have like you said at the start, an aspiration to become more than themselves, to go beyond themselves, and not just be swept away with the passage of time and faith. There's an active role that they have to take. And it's interesting talking to Micah Redding. They have a similar feeling. It's not exactly the same, but it's a similar feeling. It's a feeling of not just sitting idly by while Satan rules the system of things and and does evil upon the earth. And this is not the attitude. You yourself, you've read Ray Kurzweil. This is a very in some respects exciting. In other respects, it's very terrifying. In some ways, it's a very interesting. And it implies a lot about how intelligent or people really are. They are kind of almost like gods bottled up in biology, and that's kind of what, and that's kind of it's kind of interesting to see that unraveling, that self-directed human evolution unraveling before our own eyes. And I think more and more people are waking up, especially in the religious community, that there is a divide happening now because of technology. It's forcing people to choose one path or the other. It's not. It's either sit idly by and let it happen to you, and the longer that God this wicked system of things perpetuates itself, they will start to be left behind because of the sort of passive nature of their attitude towards technology, or they can embrace it and try and keep up with it at a bare minimum. And the Mormon transhumanists and Christian associations say, well, you know what? It's actually in our hands to do good with this technology, and to ensure that that the technology is ethical and that it's used to enhance human health, human wealth, the environment, and within our capacity within human capacity as good people, as good beings, which we definitely are, as being created in the image of God from a religious point of view. We're good. We were corrupted, by certain mechanisms, but that doesn't make us inherently evil, and it also doesn't eliminate the fact that we don't have a choice to use this technology for good. It doesn't always have to be pushed off in a negative direction. But religion is definitely hitting that point now where it is starting to split up, and this is why I'm fascinated with the Mormon Transhumanist Association, the Christian Transhumanist Association, and these others, because they're on the hard edge of actively seeking answers and pushing the edge of what's possible on the benevolent side, on the good side of technological advancement. And you read Ray Kurzweil, and you know what's coming down the pipeline, but you don't see it's all negative, right?
No, I'd say definitely there are huge risks. I think the whole world today recognizes that, we are, things can happen really fast, and the world can change on a dime. And there are huge risks, but there are also huge positive. There's a lot of positive potentiality also that can be realized, and I think the strategy or the tack or the approach should be, let's really work to do what we can to mitigate risks and to leverage and make the most out of possibilities for bright futures. And I did get the link to load for those two statements. So they're not very long. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll just read a couple to give you a sense.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So let's see. So first I'll read from the Transhumanist Declaration, and it reads, first tenet, humanity stands to be profoundly affected by science and technology in the future. We envision the possibility of broadening human potential by overcoming aging, cognitive shortcomings, involuntary suffering, and our confinement to planet Earth. We believe that this is the second tenet, we believe that humanity's potential is still mostly unrealized. There are possible scenarios that lead to wonderful and exceedingly worthwhile enhanced human conditions. We recognize that humanity faces serious risks, especially from the misuse of new technologies. There are possible realistic scenarios that lead to the loss of most or even all of what we hold valuable. Some of these scenarios are drastic, others are subtle. Although all progress is change, not all change is progress. So that kind of gives a sense for what we've just been talking about. Like, I feel like I'm probably genetically an optimist, and I think there are some Mormon optimistic roots in me, but I'm also very aware of big risks, and probably not aware as I should be of the risks, and probably not as aware as any of us is able to at this point of some of the beautiful possibilities. Now I'll read a couple tenets from the Mormon transhumanist affirmation. We are disciples of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is to trust in, change toward, and fully immerse our bodies and minds in the role of Christ to become compassionate creators as exemplified and invited by Jesus. We understand the gospel to be compatible with and complementary to many religions and philosophies, particularly those that provoke strenuous pursuit of compassionate and creative exaltation. We believe that scientific knowledge and technological power are among the means ordained of God to enable such exaltation, including realization of diverse prophetic visions of transfiguration, immortality, resurrection, renewal of this world, and the discovery and creation of worlds without end. So that kind of gives you a flavor for the two different documents. And again, in the Mormon Transhumanist Association, the purpose of the association is to promote both of those documents.
Yeah, the first one, like you said, is very secular, but it's very clear and crystallized, and it's good. And the second one, the Mormon one, I've spent a lot of time around Mormons. I've been to a Mormon church before a couple of times, studied with some Mormons, done some Mormon stuff. So I know some of the language in there. Some of the language is a little tricky, transfiguration, and there's some other little tricky words in there that mean slightly different definitions than how people mean think about them. But I can follow it for the most part, and yeah, it's very interesting. Very, very, very. For a Mormon, it's very concise. That's concise language. Maybe for an external person who's coming in, they might you be tricked up on one or two of the words. Exaltation, another word. But yes, it's otherwise no. It's very interesting. Very interesting document. Lots embedded in there, and it's cognizant with this idea, the Mormon idea definitely, but this transhumanist idea of of self-improvement for the betterment of the whole, and and yourself as well. And it's just extremely interesting document.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a tendency, or there has been a tendency, for religion and science to kind of fight against each other. And having both of those documents and kind of saying, hey, we are in full support of both of these documents, I think it's a gesture to saying, hey, we're all on the same team here. The Mormon transhumanist affirmation can resonate with people who are maybe tend toward more on the spectrum of trusting religion, don't trust science. That it could resonate with them and could bring them along to see, oh, okay, I can get behind this idea, and the transhumanist declaration can do the same type of thing with people who are maybe more on the spectrum of I trust science, I look with suspicion on religion, and bring them along in the same way to come to a realization that, hey, we're all on the same team. We're trying to make the most of this human condition. We're trying to seek after the best, the greatest visions of humanity, and do what we can to figure out what those are and get as close to that as we can. And of course, as we improve and improve, then the goalpost keeps moving until we're finally at a place where we're post-human.
Yeah, and what do you think about in terms of this resonating with existing LDS members, or when you preach it to, say, I know, for example, the Mormons, the LDS Church likes to do missionary work. Can you take this on a mission, and would it resonate with different groups around the world, for example?
Yeah, if your question is, does this resonate with Mormons, with LDS Mormons, and I would say it definitely resonates with a lot of them. I mean, it resonates with me. We're small enough that the message hasn't got out to So mainstream LDS members wouldn't be familiar with Mormon transhumanism, but they could read the Mormon transhumanist affirmation and they could easily sense that, oh, this resonates with kind of my religious views. Of course, there are some members of the LDS Church who could read it and go, this is a different interpretation of Mormon doctrines than I'm familiar with, or that I would embrace. But I would say there's the LDS Church is flexible enough that one can totally embrace Mormon transhumanism, or somebody could also reject Mormon transhumanism and be fine in the LDS Church.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And again, Mormonism is a young religion. It's a very young religion, and it hasn't had much time to solidify. I know when I said that to Lincoln Cannon, he started going on about the history of Mormonism. But when you talk about a real old religion like Islam or Christianity in its full, like Catholicism or something like that, Catholics call the Anglicans young. In comparison,
right.
so it's only 200 years old or something. I think something as young as Mormonism has a lot of room for flexibility inside itself. I'm seeing that here with Mormon transhumanism. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and those. They're essentially dying now. They're not surviving into the new world because they're not very flexible. But I find Mormons are definitely more flexible in how they approach, and they're sort of more unified in their purpose and their vision. And I think this has something to do with how Joseph Smith basically set up Nauvoo. I think Nauvoo had a very solidifying effect, being a sort of a town, city-state in itself, but then the pilgrimage as well. Now, this pilgrimage was, from Nauvoo to Salt Lake City or Utah over there. I think this had a very solidifying effect on Mormons, and even though they do split up into these some little fractious groups, I think that at the end of the day, a Mormon is a Mormon is a Mormon is a Mormon, and they might have an inter family feud or something, but they do sort of resonate with that group welfare, as opposed to, say, Jehovah's Witnesses, which didn't have the solidifying factor around Jehovah's Witnesses was the persecution in the jails when they didn't go to war in World War One. Their leadership was thrown into the jails, and it didn't have a massive effect on them themselves. It had more of an effect on the leadership at that time, obviously, and it wasn't a hugely solidifying moment as opposed to something like the pilgrimage or Nauvoo or the modern day incarnation of Utah, the Salt Lake City. I think this is has a more solidifying group aspect to it than say Jehovah's Witnesses. So no, I find Mormons very interesting in that respect, and I find the fact that you can find a Mormon transhumanist association on a young religion like this, which is flexible enough to have its members to integrated or cross-pollinate with the mainstream of that church. Very exciting. I find that very exciting as a non-Mormon. I find that very exciting, and I find that very energetic. And that's why I have you guys on, because I find that that's something really worth talking about, and it's just really invigorating, because I just it's that issue that you were talking about, the the battle, so to speak, between science and religion. This sort of proves that doesn't always have to exist. And I know a lot of the very hard science people will say, well, what are you talking to a religious people for anyway? You shouldn't do that. Or the very hard orthodox religious people say, what are you talking to science people? You shouldn't do that. It's all about religion. But unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, life is what life is. The science people and the religious people, they live in the same world. We all live in the same planet. We all have to sit side by side. We're all the same species. We speak a common tongue, or not, or what. But so why not entertain these ideas and see what these people are up to, and if nothing else, encourage them to keep that up and push on in that direction, because I think this is a more positive aspect of what's going on. That's how I see it from here, from where I'm sitting.
I think you've expressed a lot of wisdom there, and I feel like the way forward is through conversation instead of separating and having two separate monologues. And I feel like you can look back at the history of Christianity and see that it really took off when it was able to syncretize with the thought of the day, which at the time was Greek philosophy. When they could kind of interpret Christian ideas through these powerful lenses of philosophy, or interpret philosophy through these powerful lenses of Christianity, that's when it really took off and resonated with a lot of people, because now it became a message that wasn't just for this small little group, but it became communicable to a much wider audience. And I think that is a big part of what the Mormon Transhumanist Association is about. It's about making these transhumanist ideas communicable to a religious audience, and making these religious ideas communicable to a transhumanist audience. And I feel like that's a big part of what we're trying to do. And I would also say, just to pick up on your illustration of some of these galvanizing moments in the history of Mormonism, like the founding of Nauvoo and the trek to Salt Lake, which first I'm impressed with your knowledge of Mormon history. But I think, for me, I feel like those are examples that really resonate with what's happening today in religions in general, and what is missing in people who have left religion but are still looking for some of the community that they had in religion. And I feel like the founding of Nauvoo was this great opportunity where these early Mormon saints could talk a lot amongst themselves and really formulate some ideas. And then they moved west, and that was this other galvanizing moment that really tied them together. And what I think we see is they were collaborating together, moving toward what they deemed as a worthy cause, even like divine cause. They were doing this, they were working with each other on this divine cause, and they were seeing evidences of that. They built this temple, and they could say, see, look, we work together, and we're on this divine cause, and we can see the effects of it. And I feel like today, today, the way forward to have that kind of strong community is to do the same thing, to collaborate on causes that we can see the evidences of progress, that we can see, we are moving toward a better world. And I think religions, where religious community is struggling, it's when adherents are asked to do things, but they don't see the end result. They don't see how this is moving them toward a better world. It just feels like I'm just jumping through hoops, going through the motions of what this religion is asking me to do, and I'm not seeing how it's improving the world. I'm just seeing how it's tightening my association with this religion. And I feel like in secular communities, it's the same thing. You can have communities, but in my experience, they don't have the bonds that are as strong as the religious communities, when the religious communities are really collaborating toward these big ends. And again, the way forward, I feel like, is collaborative efforts toward these big ends, and we can see that we're progressing. So to take the Mormon Transhumanist Association, or to take the kind of topics that we've been talking about and saying, yeah, the way forward, when we'll have really strong community, will be when we are really working together to solve things like COVID-19, or to solve things like generational poverty and genocide. And when we can see, hey, we're working together and we're really seeing that we're making progress, that will be where community, really profoundly strong community, emerges, that is every bit as strong as any religious community has ever had before, because it's doing the same thing. We're working together toward these divine or very important aims.
Yeah, some really profound points in there, and you hit on a right note here about community. Mormons are a very special type of community. They have endured a lot of different traumas in the past together, and you don't write them off. They're not shirkers. The Mormons are known, renowned worldwide for being extremely hard work. They work very hard. They're very dedicated to helping others and other community events. They pour in millions and millions and millions of hours of time. I don't know how many hours you would know better than I do of trying to teach people their craft, and teach people Jesus and building churches. They push well above their weight when it comes to international aid, and they have their own aid organizations, and also they join these world forums all the time, and they push well above their weight in that. And they have this they have a big respect for, even though they're it's simultaneously separate from the United States in the fact that they are a community group unto themselves, they are very much part of the United States, where they respect highly the Constitution, and they work hard to make the United States the best they can, even going as far as people like Mitt Romney. You don't write the Mormons off. Mitt Romney, being a Mormon, got almost to the White House. So you don't write Mormons off. Well known for hard work, well known for their community effort, and their respect globally. But that is you said something there. Maybe when religious people fall out of a religion, especially some sort of religion that's a tight-knit group, they might become isolated on the outside, and they might find transhumanism or something else, and say, but now I feel isolated, and that is a pull. That is a pull of religion. Religion does offer a very strong sense of community, and rightly so, and Mormons especially so. Not the only religion that does that, but very well known for that. I mean, you look at a lot of churches across America, Protestant churches, they're empty. It's all big churches now, and the big churches are a double-edged sword, because if you go to some of these big televangelist pastors or preachers, on one hand you get a cocaine rush of community when you're in a big church. It's an ecstatic event. There's lights. There's people on stage running about and doing stuff, and you might get this big hit for a moment, but actually there's no solid group there. It's come back next week, and you sit in the arena and you do it all again, but there's not a strong sense of community there apart from the them saying that there is, and that's not a real community. Whereas I think Mormons and some others, but Mormons especially, pull people into actually living the lifestyle of a community, and that is a big pull for people. So yes, and being maybe secular or something, that's not necessarily always true, but there is that lack of community on the outside. So no, it's a very important point, and they don't have to be antithetical. You can definitely find community in the secular sense, but but some people want to be religious too. Some people do find a lot of solace in God, and in Mormon interpretations of God, and they find a lot of solace and a lot of energy and exhilaration in that. And I think it's great. So let's if you want to just mention anything else, otherwise I'm going to ask you about your own company or your own endeavor over there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's what else I would mention. I appreciate your comments and analysis and wisdom here, and I would also add Jehovah's Witnesses to strong religion with strong communities, and I also would echo that there's plenty of community outside of religion, and I guess what I'm trying to articulate is, in my experience, part of what I really valued about growing up in the LDS Church was this idea that everything I'm doing, this is what God wants me to do. This is like part of the kingdom of God. And it was basically, by definition, it was. And I think what we need to do moving forward is not take things as not accept tautologies that, well, whatever I do in church is doing what God wants me to do. And I think we need to be able to step back and say, what is it that I'm doing? And is it moving us toward God? Is it moving us toward the greatest visions of humanity? And whether that is, and that doesn't need to be a religious question. That can be a secular question as well. And I think we'll find that communities emerge when we are collaborating together toward these grand visions of what we can be, when we're legitimately working toward making the world better, and we are making progress. That's when long-lasting, strong community emerges. It's not, hey, we like to go have drinks on the weekend. And I know we can't talk about anything like this during COVID, during this coronavirus, where, oh yeah, what we'd give just to be able to go have a drink with someone. But for the long-lasting community, I think it is more, we're bound to each other because we are committed to making this world a better place, and we're making progress on that.
And we need each other more and more and more, because there's not so many of us out there, and we need each other more and more, regardless of where we sit, if we're Mormon transhumanists or quote unquote secular transhumanists or whatever the definition is, or if you're not even a transhumanist and you're someone who's interested in emerging technologies and all this stuff, we need each other, and it has to be a global movement in order to eventually get this on the right side, so that we can navigate these in a positive direction. And again, this is why I like Christian transhumanists like Micah. I'm very much a fan of Lincoln Cannon and yourself and other Mormon transhumanists, because for the most part, it's the only religious organization, Christian transhumanists being more broad, which is great with Micah Redding, but especially the Mormons, because it's a definite space and time intersection where I can find the very fundamental crossover between a religion and a transhumanism, done in a very professional, for the lack of a better term, but done in a very professional, organized, and sincere way. And it's very sincere and it's very encouraging, and I would love to see other organizations and other religions start to wake up to this fact and start to consider what you guys are doing, and even ask themselves if they agree or don't. I'm not here to say everybody needs to agree, but I think they need to start thinking about, do they agree with this stuff or do they not agree? Some Baptists in America have written statements saying they definitely do not agree. And, I respect that more than people than religions or organizations that either fence sit or not fence sit so much. Fence sitting is okay, but don't even consider these implications or facts, because I find that they're not taking the Bible or the secular warnings that are flashing out there like a big red sign seriously. And I think that's a lack of that's a little bit right now. It's still a little bit early, but soon it will be too hard to not judge those organizations that are not doing that. I think this is too big an issue to ignore. And if we are part of God's plan, as they say, or the creation or whatever in God's life, then they have to take note of what God's children are doing, and to ignore that is to ignore creation itself. And I think that's a little silly, and it's a little disappointing. So that's why I think you guys are way far ahead of myself and everybody else on this in this arena. And I think the Mormons have a very special place in this arena, because of who they are, because of what they believe, and the youngness of the religion. The youngness doesn't matter so much, but I think the fact that it is young, it doesn't have so many traditions. It doesn't have to go back to the 1400s or something. Right. It's not a. It's quite a it's very, very interesting religion. Lots and lots of room to maneuver in Mormonism. So, and I think you guys are really out on the edge on something very important. Anyway, all right. So what do you guys? What's your company? What are you up to out there? Scholarships or something? What are you up to, Blair?
Well, first I should say it's very generous of you to talk about the Mormon Transhumanist Association and some of the good that we have done. I feel like, again, it's small. We're young. The Mormon Transhumanist Association is very young, but I do feel like,
but very important.
I feel like very important, and I feel like has done a good job of articulating some of the shape of what religion can look like moving forward in a way that is communicable to a lot of people. And also, just to pick up on what you said about these statements by Baptist religions saying they reject this. Again, I want to get to a point where we can articulate what we want in a communicable way and basically challenge people to say, okay, you don't want to solve poverty? Is that the claim you want to make? Or fine, if you want to say you don't think technology has anything to do with it, but here's our communicable way of saying that what we're doing is a good way forward. So again, making it communicable, making it so people don't feel threatened and don't feel like, oh, they're taking God out of this.
The only reason you're not on God. The only reason you're not on CNN or MSNBC or something is because you are so small. But really, the Transhumanist Association is blazing new trails into the unknown, And that's what I find really exciting, because you've taken the courage to leap out into the unknown and say, let's start plotting a path. You're doing the Nauvoo to Utah Trail. I mean, this is what this is why it's so exciting. It's not, you guys are explorers. You're taking a risk, so to speak, and you're blazing the new trails. And that's the world will wake up to that, and when they write the history books, or something, that's a chapter in there, and that's the fact. That's the fact. I mean, that's all it is.
And I would say, you've referenced it a few times that this is an American religion, this is a young religion, and I agree that these are some of the benefits, that some of the beauty of America is kind of this stance of saying, we're not just going to accept what everyone told us before is how things have to be done. We're going to go blaze a new trail. We're going to go come up with a new way to govern. We're not going to just take the answers from before. We're going to explore. It's a wide frontier, and we're going to go blaze a new trail.
Yeah,
and I feel like there's
the
definitely that
definition.
ethic. Yeah, there's definitely that ethic in Mormonism. I think that runs deep in Mormonism, and it runs deep in America. And I hope that the Mormon Transhumanist Association, that we can always have that. It's never advisable to rest on your laurels. We always are moving ahead until we really have finished. And we'll know that we've finished because, we're post-human.
Yeah, and there's a converging there between, the both silent groups, as you would want to call it, on the secular side, which is the main population groups, and the religious side, which either don't want to know or don't care. I mean, we're all moving towards the same pinnacle point anyway. So whoever's pulling us on both sides, whoever's yanking us up on that rope on both edges towards that pinnacle point, eventually the groups will start to connect and merge and talk about what's happening, because you can't. It's like the internet. You can't ignore it. You can't. Everybody knows what it is. It's a global phenomenon. You can't be like, I've never heard of the internet. I don't know what it is. It's everybody knows it. I mean, there's a race. If you're an African farmer, you need the internet to get your commodity prices, and it's something that's been pushed out to you in the middle of nowhere, sort of, so to speak. It's not nowhere, but so to speak. So no, it's everybody's being pushed in the same direction. And it's going to take trailblazers like the Mormon Transhumanist Association, the Christian Transhumanist Association, to set a template so that as they start to, everybody starts to waddle up that line, you actually have the talking points and the notions of what the heck is even going on. The secular side as well, the same thing. The Ray Kurzweilian types. And many of the others who know what's going on, that's the same thing. They're trying to put a template out or an idea out there saying this is kind of what's happening, and people bump into the ceilings of the change all the time, and we are racing towards that post-human world. What does that post-human world look like? Well, it's up to people like the Mormon Transhumanist Association and Ray Kurzweil and others to try and navigate what that could potentially look like. Because right now, where we stand, it's a variety. There's a lot of different ways it could go, but at the same time, those pathways are simultaneously narrowing and they're also expanding. But it's happening simultaneously, and it's kind of odd. Because it is kind of like the water going down the sink towards the post-human world. But at the same time, it's like right now where we stand, we have 10,000 sinks all going at once, and we could dive into any one of them, or we could dive into multiple ones. And that's just where we are at this point in history, and it's kind of confusing. But, you know, organizations like yourself, and I would love to see a myriad of organizations like yourself. I don't want to just, I would love
Absolutely.
to have the Catholic Transhumanist Association and the Anglican Transhumanist Association and the Buddhist Transhumanist, although probably the whole Buddhist is probably it anyway, but yeah, you know what I mean, right? So, and I think the Mormon Transhumanist Association would agree that there needs to be more cross-lingual, cross-cultural communication in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. There are totally realistic nightmare futures in front of us, and there are totally realistic, beautiful futures in front of us. And whatever it is will depend on our actions today.
Yeah,
right
now. Yeah, it's kind of cool. All right, well, let's talk about your company, and then that'll be cool.
Sure. So I'm a co-founder of an online school. It's called New Lane University. It's at newlaneuniversity.com. And the idea is we offer a college degree a U.S. college degree for $1,000. We currently offer an Associate of Arts, which is like the first 2 years of college in the U.S. And we also offer a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. We've been around since 2017. So like the MTA, we're young and new, but it's my co-founder is he's developed the basic platform, and it's a really revolutionary platform, and it's a way for people all around the world to be able to afford a quality college degree. So we have, we're young and small, but we have students all over the world on every continent except for Antarctica. We also have experts on every continent except Antarctica. And it's a really rewarding company, and we're got a lot of exciting things coming up for it.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. I'll definitely leave the link in the description as well, and I would actually have a look at that myself because I always want to learn more stuff, and that sounds really, really exciting. Well, it's been a really cool conversation. I'd love to have you on again soon. Talk more about the Mormon Transhumanist Association, and I want to meet more Mormons as well. But as I said, we'll want to try and grow. You said it's a very new organization, but it's actually really, really old in the respect of transhumanist associations with religion. So
right,
it's a trailblazer, right. And it is new, but it's at the same time it's a really cutting edge, innovative.
Transhumanism as a formal movement is new. So in terms of that, it's very old.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, but I want to encourage you and thank you so much, Ben, and you've been fantastic, and we'll leave the link in the description, and well done with your company. I love this idea of expanding education around the world at an affordable cost. This is the time to do it, and with the COVID-19 pandemic that's going on, lots of more people are thinking about online education. They're thinking because they can't access traditional universities or traditional places of learning because they're locked up at home. So, this is a really exciting way of continuing the learning process despite, the biological limits outside because of viruses and all that sort of stuff. So
right.
Really, really thank you for that.
My pleasure. And just another quick note on it, that basically we're trying to make education available for people who are interested in a college degree but have been blocked up till now because of constraints of cost or geography or scheduling. And those are all very flexible with us. And it's $1,000 for a degree, but students just pay $39 a month. So it's very manageable.
It's called Debt Nation, the show, and I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about student debt in the United States and how it's a crazy system and how you end up with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 degrees for left-handed puppetry, and how that's kind of silly. So I wouldn't advise that. But no, this is not unreasonable at all. And education is really fundamental. It's something that improves your country, improves your mental well-being. It gives you something to do. It provides you with a better future. And you talked about eliminating, for example, eliminating poverty, or eliminating extreme poverty, or a lot of things. Education is right at the center of killing a lot of the bad things that go along with humanity. More educated people, more educated population. You can eliminate and empower by empowering people, and it's about empowering individuals who empower themselves, then they empower their groups around them, that empower their communities, and the whole world can get stronger through education. So really thank you for that. And this is not an unreasonable fee. There are a lot of crazy high fees for, as I said, left-handed puppetry. And so, so we won't go there. But thank you so much, Ben. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Steele.
All right, that's Ben. Thanks to everybody for watching Detonation, and we'll see you all in the future. And thanks to everyone supporting Detonation, keeping it on the road in these hard times. And also, I want to thank Ben so much for coming on. Talking about Mormon transhumanism with me. We're hearing it more and more and more and more because it's so very important, and they're doing a great job. Thank you very much, everybody.